Let's get started. Start with listening, and then learn new words and practice them in sentences.
Have you ever wondered why some words hold so much power over us? How do they manage to sway our thoughts and emotions? These questions lead us to the realm of persuasion, a fascinating and omnipresent phenomenon that shapes the world around us. Every day we are surrounded by a sea of persuasive language. It seeps into our lives through television screens, radio, social media, and even the conversations we have. It's in the passionate speeches of world leaders, the compelling arguments of debaters, and the thought-provoking essays of writers. This language is designed to influence us, to shape our thoughts, feelings, and actions in subtle yet profound ways. And at the heart of this persuasive language are rhetorical techniques. These are the tools that skilled speakers and writers use to enhance the power of their words. They are the threads that weave together to form the fabric of compelling narratives, the building blocks that construct persuasive arguments, the strokes of the painter's brush that bring a portrait to life. Rhetorical techniques can be as straightforward as a well-placed fact or statistic, or as complex as an intricate analogy or metaphor. They can evoke a powerful emotional response, appeal to our sense of reason, or establish the credibility of the speaker or writer. They are the keys that unlock the power of persuasion. But understanding these techniques goes beyond simply recognizing them. It involves delving into their intricacies, exploring how they work, and learning how to use them effectively. It means becoming a craftsman of language, able to shape words and phrases into compelling arguments and engaging narratives. So, why should we care about these rhetorical techniques? Because understanding them gives us the power to influence. It allows us to craft our own persuasive arguments, to sway opinions, to evoke emotions, and to create memorable messages. It empowers us to express complex ideas compellingly and effectively. Understanding these tools unlocks the power to influence, and today we delve into these advanced rhetorical techniques. Let's dive into the core of persuasion: ethos, pathos, and logos. First up, ethos. Ethos refers to the credibility or ethical appeal of the speaker. It's about establishing trust. When Martin Luther King Jr. declared, "I have a dream," he was not just sharing a personal vision. He was leveraging his credibility as a clergyman and a respected civil rights leader to persuade his audience about the moral imperative of racial equality. Next, we have pathos, which appeals to our emotions. Pathos is about connecting with the audience on a deeply emotional level, stirring feelings that can drive action. An iconic example of pathos in action is Winston Churchill's "We shall fight on the beaches" speech. Churchill's vivid imagery of the looming war and his passionate resolve to never surrender stirred a deep emotional response, rallying the British people during a time of great uncertainty. Finally, we come to logos, the appeal to logic. Logos uses facts, statistics, and logical arguments to persuade the audience. It's all about making a rational case for your position. When John F. Kennedy said in his inaugural address, "Ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country," he was using logos. He presented a logical argument that reframed the citizen's relationship with the state, urging individual responsibility for the collective good. Each of these techniques, ethos, pathos, and logos, can be powerful on its own. But when combined, they create a compelling and persuasive argument that can move audiences and change minds. They're the tools that skilled speakers and writers use to influence opinions, evoke emotions, and create memorable messages. Remember, though, that these aren't the only tools in the rhetorical toolbox. There are more subtle techniques that can be just as effective when used strategically. So while ethos, pathos, and logos are the bedrock of persuasion, they're just the beginning. These techniques form the foundation of persuasion, but there are more subtle tools at our disposal. Rhetorical questions, parallelism, and analogies, ever heard of them? These are not just linguistic ornaments to add flair to our speech or writing. They are powerful rhetorical tools that can enhance the persuasiveness of our language, stirring emotions and planting seeds of thought in our audience's mind. Let's start with rhetorical questions. These are questions posed not to seek an answer, but to make a point. They are used to provoke thought, to challenge, to emphasize. Think of Socrates, the ancient Greek philosopher, who used rhetorical questions to encourage critical thinking in his dialogues. His method, now known as the Socratic method, involved asking thought-provoking questions like, "Is the unexamined life worth living?" Here, instead of lecturing, he engages his audience in a mental dialogue, prompting them to scrutinize their own beliefs. Next, we have parallelism. This technique involves using similar grammatical structures in related phrases or clauses to create a sense of rhythm and balance. A famous example is Abraham Lincoln's Gettysburg Address, where he states, "Government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth." Here, Lincoln's repetition of the preposition of followed by the people creates a rhythmic, memorable phrase that underscores his message of democracy. Finally, let's explore analogies. Analogies compare one thing to another to make a complex idea more understandable or to highlight similarities. George Orwell was a master of this technique. In his essay, Politics and the English Language, he compares dying metaphors to worn-out coins, saying, "They have lost all evocative power and are merely used because they save people the trouble of inventing phrases for themselves." This analogy vividly illustrates his point about the laziness of relying on cliched metaphors. So, rhetorical questions, parallelism, and analogies all are powerful tools that can make our language more persuasive, engaging, and memorable. They're not just techniques, they're a way to connect with our audience, to make them think, feel, and remember. These tools allow us to craft compelling and memorable messages, but how do we apply them? Now, we venture into the practical application of these techniques. When crafting persuasive arguments, the first step is to understand your audience. Who are they? What are their values, beliefs, and concerns? Understanding your audience helps you appeal to their ethos, pathos, and logos in a way that resonates with them. Tailoring your message to your audience is a critical part of effective persuasion. Next, let's talk about the context. The context in which your argument is presented can greatly influence its effectiveness. Is it a formal debate, an informal conversation, or a written essay? Each context requires a different approach. For example, rhetorical questions are more effective in spoken communication, while parallelism and analogies shine in written form. Now, on to the purpose. What are you trying to achieve with your argument? Are you trying to change someone's opinion, convince them to take action, or simply make them see things from a different perspective? Clearly defining your purpose will guide how you craft your argument and which rhetorical techniques you choose to employ. Using these techniques effectively requires practice and finesse. It's not just about using them for the sake of it, but weaving them seamlessly into your argument. For instance, using ethos, pathos, and logos is not about stating facts, evoking emotions, and establishing credibility separately. It's about intertwining them to create a compelling narrative. Remember, persuasion is an art. It's not about manipulating your audience, but about engaging them, respecting their intelligence, and inviting them to see things from your point of view. It's about making your argument so compelling that your audience not only understands it, but also finds it difficult to refute. Furthermore, don't forget to be authentic. Authenticity strengthens your ethos and makes your argument more persuasive. People are more likely to be persuaded by someone they perceive as genuine and sincere. Finally, be patient. Changing minds and influencing opinions takes time. Don't be discouraged if your argument doesn't immediately convince your audience. Persuasion is a process, not an event. Mastering these tools of persuasion can transform your language, making you a more compelling speaker and writer.
Let's learn new words and practice English at level C2. Ethos, a rhetorical appeal to ethics, used to convince an audience of the speaker's credibility or character. Example, to establish ethos, a speaker might mention their expertise or experience to build trust with the audience. Pathos, an appeal to the audience's emotions, often used to persuade by eliciting feelings like sympathy or excitement. Example, a skilled speaker uses pathos by sharing a personal story to emotionally connect with listeners. Anecdote, a brief, interesting, or amusing story about a real incident or person, often used to illustrate a point. Example, including an anecdote in your argument can make your message more relatable and memorable. Antithesis, a rhetorical technique that contrasts two opposing ideas to highlight a point. Example, using antithesis can add impact, as in, it's not about winning or losing, it's about learning and growing. Rhetorical question, a question asked for effect, not meant to be answered, but to provoke thought. Example, a rhetorical question like, who wouldn't want a better future, can engage the audience and emphasize your point.